If you have any questions, please throw them into the chat. No, the comments, not the chat. Apologies. Okay, cool. We are all set up. So I am going to let Rohan, our wonderful host, take us away. Rohan, over to you.
Thank you. That was a slow-mo into Ron. Take it away. Thanks, Walrus. Happy Friday, everyone. And GM, good afternoon. I don't know what is GA. Probably it. But thank you for spending the time this afternoon, this morning on a Friday. I know it's late in the week. Things are exciting. We have a lot of new regulations and policies getting passed. So I know everyone is glued to their phone. So taking some time away from all of that and listening to what we're doing here at Walrus and what this conversation about means a ton. And today's conversation is going to be super exciting. At least on a personal level, it will be. What we're going to be talking about is data layer for decentralized AI. So just to set context, this X Space will primarily explore how Walrus is becoming the backbone of all scalable, verifiable AI, artificial intelligence. We'll dive into why data permanence, provenance, and programmability are essential for agent coordination, model training, and transparency in the AI stack, and a ton more. So, without wasting any more time, and you guys listening to my voice talking about all the context, let's bring on our guest. But as a quick intro, I'm Rohan. I'm at Myson Labs Partnerships and Investments team, focusing on AI and consumer vertical. And with me, I have today Mike Hanano from Talus, Amir Meher Baksh from Sui Foundation, and Yannick Myson from Sui Network. So maybe we'll start with a quick round of intro. So in that order, Mike, want to go first?
Hey Rohan, how's it going, man? Can you guys hear me all right?
Loud and clear.
Yeah, so I'm Mike. I am the CEO and founder at Talus. About Talus, what we do is we believe that all economic activity across capital markets, gaming, social coordination, and even global services is moving on chain. And our mission is to build a more democratic and efficient digital economy. So we believe that Talus is the missing infrastructure for this autonomous digital economy. And for this, we're building a decentralized platform for deploying, coordinating, and monetizing autonomous systems across this digital economy to make it more efficient and democratic.
Sweet. Amir.
Yeah, what's going on, guys? Name's Amir, lead up marketing specifically for the Walrus Foundation. Been in the industry since about 2015, and definitely look at data as a really cool topic for us to dig into. So excited to dig into this a bit more today.
And last but not the least, Yannick, the chief truth teller.
Hey guys, what's up? Thank you for hosting us and hosting me. My name is Yannick. I am the founder and CEO of Swarm Network. We do something similar like Talus. We're focused on allowing our users to very rapidly deploy massive agent systems. We calculate these systems, or we allow users to build in 3 different units. So agents, clusters of up to 100 agents, and swarms. Those are combined systems with multiple clusters and distributed ownership over multiple people. But what we're specifically focused on as a foundation is we're trying to get closer to the truth in our digital ecosystem and our digital highway, as we like to say, because the world is becoming more polarized, and there's a lot of AI generated content floating out there, influencing things like elections, influencing things like just teenagers on social media. And it's very hard for us to have a common ground, which is like the ground truth. And we created an adjacent truth protocol and a few dApps fully powered by swarms that we're really excited about and that are working into the direction of trying to pull us back together as a society.
Absolutely love it. I also see Rebecca. If you want to join in as a speaker, maybe we make that happen.
Hey everyone. Hey Rohan. I'm Rebecca. I am the managing executive of the Walrus Foundation, and the foundation is there to help everybody who wants to build on Walrus come and build on Walrus and make it successful. So very nice to be here and really loving this topic.
Fantastic. So now the intros are out of the way. Let's get into the meat of it. And I want to start off with Amir. Amir, can you just tell us at a high level, or maybe a layer or two deep, what is Walrus and how does it support AI infrastructure?
Yeah, 100%. So there's a bigger story here to tell. So first, let's talk about the what and the why. So when we think about this idea of Web3 more broadly, a lot of the story has been almost exclusively around the idea of compute, L1s, L2s, kind of building out that stack. And that's all great in the idea that it introduces smart contracts, introduces the idea of how assets are coordinated between each other, how they pass along and move around smart contracts. But the biggest outstanding question is, for all of that coordination, there is this idea of what are you coordinating? And at the end of the day, that's data. Data is really the backbone of how all of this works, how all of this industry works. And there was always an outstanding question that no one was really addressing, which was the idea of, well, what do we actually think about in the idea of the future of that data? Are we looking to bring it on chain? Are we looking to continue to use centralized servers? And the real answer to this should be we believe in an on chain future. We believe in an on chain future and the idea of not only principles and ethos, but also in the idea of really what you unlock with capabilities. So Walrus, in a sense, is what it's offering is it's thinking about the idea of every aspect of data, whether it's storage, it could be availability, it could be access rights, it could be encryption of data. There are a variety of different offerings that you can think about in terms of bringing data on chain and making that data not only just smarter in terms of how it ties into smart contracts, but at a larger scale in terms of the types of use cases we're unlocking here. While the industry is more and more focused on light touch use cases that don't necessarily have the ability to really tap on a lot of data on chain, what we're focused on is unlocking a lot of these use cases. So AI is a prime example of this. So what Walrus is unlocking through all these capabilities is now we're finally able to see use cases like AI, where you have great projects like the ones with us today, able to actually explore the idea of what you could do when you had more direct access to data on chain. And so that's really the angle and what we're thinking about as it relates to AI and where the opportunity exists. Not only is it a matter of just servicing the idea of having more direct access to a higher volume of data and tying it directly to smart contracts, but also, as mentioned, other capabilities related to encryption, access rights. There's a lot of other things that we can think about when we think about not only getting the data on chain, but making it usable, making it valuable, making it monetizable, etc. There's a lot of pieces that come into play that become really interesting when we think about new use cases that go beyond the traditional ones that L1s alone were only able to service before.
That's a very comprehensive statement on what Walrus says and how it's supporting AI infrastructure. I just got a DM, the host. Can you bring in Swarm Network as one of the speakers too, please? Perfect. That's taken care of. So let's get our guests involved from Thales and Swarm here. So one of the things that I think about when I think about scalable AI and data, mostly thinking it from a problem statement, right? So you see a lot of these closed LLMs hallucinating or giving outdated answers because grounding may be opaque and could be off-chain. A lot of these machine learning data sets lack any sort of lineage or even on-chain metadata. We've often seen Llama Index or LangChain agents struggle to persist or query verifiable memory across various environments. And those have been my experiences at large. So maybe I start off, and this is an open question for both you, Yannick, as well as Mike, and can start off with Yannick. Why does AI need scalable data infrastructure or blockchain for that matter? Love to get into what some very specific pain points that you see within your product platform you're building, and more generally in at large in the industry as a whole.
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, for me, it comes down to accountability and trust in these systems that are going to become increasingly complex, right? Now we're talking about base models, but you can extrapolate that into AI agents, multi-agent systems, like larger systems like swarms, and even beyond that, once these systems start to become more interconnected and start to actually transact, maybe funds or more critical information among each other, there is a increased complexity, right? So we as the human layer, if you will, are going to be abstracted away from the actuality, because the velocity of the information that flows between these agents and systems is just going to increase, and it's potentially going to exponentially increase if we can have a big breakthrough and there's going to be like more adoption in the space, which I see coming, honestly. But that's going to bring a lot of problems with its evolution, and the evolution is it's a very steep curve up, right? So we need to have some kind of like accountability and some kind of way to make sure that whatever is being done is traceable, is explainable, and is trustworthy, right? And the hallucination like thing that you mentioned is indeed, one of the big caveats and the bigger issues. And I want to bring up a pretty controversial story, but there's this CEO. I forgot the name of the company, but there was some speculation today on X and yesterday that this was probably the first exposition of somebody that entered a psychosis, because this person was convinced that ChatGPT knew there was some like hidden agendas and so on, but people, hidden government programs and agendas. So this person started to kind of expose that and talk about that publicly. And I think he did even something crazy like sell his company or something like that because of it. So there's
Wait,
like these.
are you referring to that article that came out around ChatGPT psychosis? Psychosis?
Yeah,
I think it
yes.
was New York Times or something. Okay, got it.
Yeah, I think it was that. So like we need to be able to understand these things, and that's just one of the issues that can be caused, right? But yeah, so it's a trust, accountability, and explainability are the most three important factors here. And for that, you really need a decentralized, immutable, distributed solution. Because if we give the power to, like the major infrastructure providers that are centralized companies, let's just name the big boys, like OpenAI and Anthropic, then you give too much power away, and that is going to be not a net positive for our society. It's going to actually be a negative.
I totally agree. And Yannick, can I ask you to explain a bit more on folks who might not be aware of what ChatGPT or some of these model psychosis is? Like, can you help define? Can you help frame it for the audience here?
Yeah, so it's actually really easy to understand, right? So when a new technology comes around, which is very powerful, like let's say the light bulb and electricity, um, people back then were completely mesmerized and even to a certain degree spooked out about this technology, right? So there's always a very visceral reaction to the technology. And currently, the visceral reaction that we see is that people just blatantly believe and trust in LLM outputs, like generated outputs, right? So the fundamental problem with that is that the hallucinations of these models are so profoundly and linguistically engineered that it almost seems that everything that comes out of this large language model is the truth, right? So there's actually a study. I think it's actually a study done by Anthropic, but I'm not sure. I might be mistaken here, but it showed that if, for example, you indicated, even if it's formulated in a question format, a certain type of belief or a certain type of like a belief. So you ask a question, but you're pointing towards, like an answer in your question. Then the LLM would actually go and try and convince you that it, like had the information, and it tries to verify your, let's say, your gut feeling. So this is very dangerous because that's like a nuclear fusion, right? First of all, if my predisposition is that I completely trust and fully believe that what I'm talking to is a superior intelligence and it's trained on the internet, and therefore it must also understand that there's like hidden information that is like not available to the public, And then I start to hint towards my belief. This is like this classic psychological thinker prover issue where I think something, I go out in the world and I try and prove it. So now, like this person probably indicated and was talking about certain things in the chat with ChatGPT, and then it like now it has this memory thing built in. So it all the time was streaming back information. And this information in particular was about deep state, secret government, mind control uh, organizations and programs and so on. And this person became completely convinced that, we're in some kind of like crazy simulation, and became, psychosis was literally induced. And it doesn't mean that everybody is vulnerable to this, but I think a lot of people in the world actually are right now. And it's you know, are you letting your kids talk to ChatGPT? And did you ever think about what kind of effect that will have on them? Besides that, they will be able to learn faster. There's also dangers, that we haven't really understood or explored yet in traditional academia like psychology studies and so on.
That's brilliant. And for folks who are just joining in, just listening in, this is not a doomsday spaces that we are on. This is happening, and I think it's worth mentioning and clarifying what some of these things means. And thank you, Yannick, for explaining that to the audience here. Same question to you, Mike, as well. Like, why does AI need scalable data infrastructure? I know you're tackling it from a completely different, not a completely different angle, but building an entire AI agent network and platform. Would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it's first crazy to hear what we just talked about. Like, if you think about how this whole AI agent craze started in crypto, was with a truth terminal that had some similar experience where it went to the darkest corner of the internet to find a piece of data that just made everybody think that agents could become crazy. And it's going to be even crazier as we see more and more agents roam more data. But I do think, to answer the question, I think that AI systems are only as good as the data that they rely on. And especially within decentralized environments, you need trust, consistency, and skill to become actual useful services and that are robust and tamper resistant. I think that, on top of this, agents should also access data that's verifiable, it's persistent, and it's available at all times, and not just, a system that can go down and prevent access and liveness. And, just you can't just necessarily have centralized APIs or hidden services. I think that Walrus, for example, fills a very interesting gap because you have a decentralized layer that's basically built to serve any type of scalable data needs within crypto, and it's not existent right now. You didn't have a way to bring data to smart contracts as seamlessly as you had before Walrus. And I think specifically for agents, it gives this shared tamper-proof memory where you could store, retrieve facts, context, logs, and you can have agents that make decisions based on reliable, auditable inputs, coordinated with other agents through shared state of data. Imagine like a shared database that agents share to make decisions, and even like persist knowledge across different agent workflows. Where, let's say, you could have a workflow execute, and then you need the output 3 weeks later to make another decision. You could have all these things in a scalable infrastructure. So yeah, you could tap into open data sets and use that data for like training and inferencing that actually require a lot of resources. So to summarize, I think just like verifiability, coordination, and actual incentives. And yeah, I could keep on rambling, but these three.
Yannick, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I wanted to add on something to that because like this is something that I've been asked about in the community. People are like, yeah, but if you are going to store all of these things on Walrus, like all of the agent communication and attestations and so on, isn't that going to take away from people's ability to create unique businesses and so on? And actually, the really simple answer to that is like, look, you can store data, but it doesn't mean that everybody will be able to read that data, right? It can be encrypted and so on. So even if, for example, me and Mike just want to have like two agents coordinate stuff with each other, but we want that to be obscured from the rest of the world. But we want to be sure that Mike's agent is doing what he's, like he's promoting that he's doing. And, like if if I'm sending some funds for whatever purpose, I want to be able to verify all of that, right? So then we can decide to encrypt that data, but we can still store it on Walrus and we can read it, but just nobody else can, right? So there's flexibility there, which is important to understand.
Yeah, and I think this is where Seal comes in, where you could control encryption and how data is written and who can access it. We've done a lot of experiments with it and how different tools can communicate within our agentic framework, and how you could basically make sure that an agent could access a certain database, but another agent could not read it. And you could even use these permissions to sell data or monetize it, which I also think it's one of the most interesting use cases for AI agents, that you could make all not only just assets trading or yield, but also information monetizable.
No, I think that this is amazing, and that's why like our entire engineering team, when we think about at Mr. Labs, when we think about building products and features and protocols, it's not just like let's shoot it in the dark and see something sticks or not, right? So Walrus was created as this protocol level, but since then our team has also identified use cases and gaps that exist exactly to what you said, Yannick, right? So we are in works of going live with Seal, which will be on mainnet shortly, which helps with this exact encryption decryption of data sets that are sitting on Walrus, right? So it solves for that very specific federated data access use cases, and that will enable new business models, revenue streams, etc., for folks building on Walrus, leveraging Sui. And then the other on the computation front as well, I think attestation of a lot of these computations that happen on chain, we have something called Nautilus, which is already live on chain. So within TE environments, when you're doing computation, you can store those off-chain results and attest them on chain forever, right? So at least you have a provenance, that accountability and clarity in terms of who can audit, when they can audit, they can go in and they know what happened when, and there's an actual lineage of what's happening. So this entire stack that we're building at Sui through includes all of those specific pain points that you're identifying. So thank you for bringing those up. I think it's important for the audience here to hear what all is being cooked within Miston and our engineering team at large. Instagram call in between. I apologize. So just holding on what Mike was touching on real quick here, right? So AI agents. I would love to understand a bit agents and the challenges that you currently have, because I love the framing of the agent types that you had. Speak a bit more on that front.
Yeah, of course. So we at Talos have come up with a new type of agent that will create this, or that would make the digital economy agentic. We have categorized agents in 4 different types. The first one is type 0, which is the traditional agents that you see in Web 2. You could build in with LangChain for AI, AutoGPT, N8N, etc. It means that all the logics and actions happen off chain. No native blockchain interaction, nothing to do with blockchains. They even don't touch digital assets. Then you have type 1, which is a bit more crypto native. You could think about it as agents that are integrated into ELIZA, ARC. These agents basically have all the compute off chain and they coordinate off chain, but they have access to wallets and can trigger on chain transactions. Then you have, I'm going to skip one type and talk about type 2 at the end, but then you have type 3, which is, imagine an agent that's fully hosted on a blockchain. All the compute, all the logic, the state happens fully on chain. And I do think that this is where we want to get, where we have a fully decentralized agent that could manage assets, that could talk to people, that could coordinate protocols, etc. But right now it's a bit too far. I think it's infeasible. I think that we're also getting closer to this, and it's only possible on Sui. But we're still too far fetched from this because there's a lot of like moving parts in how we can make this infrastructure scalable, and that's why I think also that Walrus could be a good addition to this. And then finally, type 2, which is what we're building at Talos, is this type of new agent where you have the orchestration and the execution of the agent live off on chain, but the compute happens off chain. So you could have a model happen off chain or even connect OpenAI's API, and execute the whole agent with the workflow on chain. And touching back to what Rohan was mentioning uh, about Nautilus, you could call like a Nautilus, like if you're running an agent inside Nautilus or a TE, and then you have the workflow coordination on chain, you could consider it like a 2.5, where you have much more decentralization, much more trustlessness within the execution of the model.
That's spot on. Yannick, I would love to get your thoughts here as well.
Yeah, I have some value to add here. That's great thinking, by the way, Mike, and I think that's a very clear overview of how we get to the next stages. The first thing which I want to say is that, you know, you can easily tell that all of these technologies that we're all working on here on this call are all intertwined together, right? Because if we want to have fully on-chain agents, right? Like then the entire storage, the entire model, all the weights, all the data, all the interaction, all the logs, like all of that will have to live on chain for at least a certain amount of time, right? So we'd have to, you know, like as a community effort, we'd have to scale Walrus up together. We'd have to have people run their nodes and contribute on a larger scale because, you know, like now everybody is just over reliant on these, again, central authoritative cloud feudalistic companies, right? So they are building massive data centers and servers and so on, and we're all just blindly relying on that. But I think that just like with the financial, you know, like story of the financial system that it has to transcend to Web3, you know, the next step would be to transcend the entire stack for these kind of decentralized application and AI agents to be fully on chain. And it's possible, you know, like, but we're also very early. Then the second thing which I want to touch on is that we also really like to think, and we're developing more infrastructure for the distribution of ownership for these agents, but also then the governance for these agents. Actually, we're not really focused on agents, to be honest. We're more focused on the cluster and swarm level of things. But to open your mind and to imagine what's possible, let's say like we have a group of like 1,000 Thales builders. They're all building like 5 to 10 agents, and they want to join together into one, you know, strong force. Um, they could do so, and they could have a underlying asset and an underlying governance structure among the agents and the owners of the agents that allow them to make collective decisions in regards of like updating the system or what kind of things they're focused on. So we've actually managed to orchestrate the very first large-scale swarm that does so, and we are actually leasing back our licenses from our users to be able to scale up this swarm. And the swarm is powering Rollup News, which is a really cool applications. But if we get to that, we can talk about that.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely get to that. Just one question for you guys, as you guys are deeply in the agents world. Like, how are you thinking about solving for the stateless agents currently essentially being stateless between various sessions, right? So I go to a session, I talk about something, and then there's a next session that happens, and the entire context is missing. At what level are you guys thinking about solving some of those issues? Mike or Yannick?
Yeah, I can go first. Yeah. So we have a principle which is selective memory for large scale systems. So there is a agent within a swarm or a cluster of agents within a swarm that has one sole purpose, or they have one sole purpose, which is to identify kind of like the red line and to make sure that the whole of the system stays aligned with the direction that was either set out from the start or that gradually developed through the interactions. So this essentially builds kind of like a global memory that all of the agents within a cluster or within a swarm can reference to and understand kind of like what the priorities are at that given moment. And our swarms and our clusters are not built specifically to be able to interact with users They can, but it's not the optimal use case for us. For us, the optimal use case is for a swarm to become literally like a middleware layer for several applications doing a really good job at like a specific thing. So for example, we created the Truth Swarm that powers the very first like fact-checking, decentralized fact-checking application on X, which is called Rollup News. And all that swarm does, all that specific Truth Swarm does is it takes content and claims and goes out to verify them, then builds like dossiers of evidence, and then finds consensus among like a very large group of different agents, currently around 5,000 agents. But it's dynamic, fluctuates. So sometimes some agents are redacted, sometimes some agents are added depending on the specific task at hand. So, but it's important that we define the input and the output for the swarm, and it can be called kind of like an API, but it's more dynamic in a sense. So that is for us like the really strong kind of like use case, but still like the global memory is very important because there's also some other functions, for example, like we can call the database and we can do some chronological mapping of like how, for example, like news stories evolve over time and this kind of stuff. So for that, we need to have some kind of like awareness for either the individual agents or the clusters or the swarm at large.
That's beautiful. Mike, do you have anything to add on that one?
I think it's an interesting design. For us, it's a bit more straightforward because our framework and our infrastructure enables you to plug in multiple, or at least enables you to plug in and choose what type of data layer you want to have supported in your agent and have it used in whatever way you want it for memory. So we've integrated different Walrus tools, and any developer that comes into the platform, they could just orchestrate a workflow or orchestrate multiple tools into a workflow and choose exactly how they want to store the data, what data they want to store, for how long, how much they want to pay for it. And even the people that host these tools and have the connections to Walrus, which could be data publishers, they could charge and monetize these interactions. So ultimately, the developer could come build an agent, or even if it's not a developer, they could use our product called Tal's Vision, where they could just drag and drop different types of tools and orchestrate the workflow. And they could basically set the parameters that they want to use for data, how long they want to store it for, and even eventually, once we have seal integration and different types of privacy primitives, they could choose what agents and what workflows they want to give access to, and even provide more incentivization over the data.
Thank you so much, Yannick and Mike, for just providing an overview in terms of like how you guys are thinking about agents and scalability for the decentralized AI side of things. Now, I want to get a bit more granular and maybe start here with Yannick. We'd like to bring you in and just kind of ask, how is Swarm Network integrating Walrus into Rollup News, and why? Let's maybe just start there, and then I'll ask a follow-up.
Yeah, sure. Let me explain Rollup News first in a step-by-step manner. So if you're an X user, you can tag @rollup _news plus the word rollup, that's ROLLUP, under any piece of content that you find on X, whether it's an article or a video or a picture or just a thread, it doesn't really matter. What happens is that tag and that account interacts with the Truth Swarm. It sends the entirety of the tweet plus all of the comments, plus it also pulls adjacent posts, so posts in similar fashion about the same topic, and it feeds that into the Truth Swarm. Then what happens is the Truth Swarm is built according to a very certain philosophy, which is called atomic claims. So the claims that are being made within that piece of content, let's say it's a video, or let's say it's a thread. So a thread is easy, right? You can see, okay, we have claim X, Y, Z, D, E, F, G, and so on. And then those claims are broken down into the smallest verifiable unit of a claim. So the main claim and then subclaims. And then all of those claims are going to be assigned to a certain cluster that specializes in retrieving a certain type of data within that swarm. So for example, if we're talking about financial data, then there are clusters available to pull like live data through through different providers. So for example, let's say like a price feed provider in oracles, or more like traditional financial APIs and so on, right? So all, all of those claims, they come back propagated and with a bunch of evidence that either supports or refutes, or if there's not enough evidence, then it's just not verified. But then a consortium of consensus agents starts to look at the evidence and the claims, and then once they find consensus on the validity, they spew out a score. For example, the score is from 0 to 100. If it's 100, it's verified. If it's 0, it's unverified. Anything in between, 50 is unverified, so requires more information. But once you get closer to 100, for example, like 75 or 80 in the trust score, then it's verified. But there are caveats. There could, for example, be new information in the future that can disprove a certain claim. It's not 100% set in stone over the, let's say, 5 to 10 year time horizon or what have you. So this whole process is very intensive. There's a lot of data, there's a lot of information being pulled from the internet, pulled from different databases. There's a lot of interaction going on between all of the different clusters. There's consensus forming and there's attestations, and all of this has to be transparent, right? Because we don't just want to say like, hey, this is our black box solution and we think this claim is true. No, we actually want our users and our community members to get involved in the process, because we cannot 100% rely always on the information and the data being available on the internet to be able to verify a certain claim, right? Maybe there's hidden information. Maybe there's information that's held on some paper dossier in a courtroom, right? So, but that information also is important and has to be made available. So we do care about, the input, external input that comes from real users in the real world. But anyways, we also care about transparency. So we're storing the evidence, we're storing like the artifacts, we're storing the agent-to-agent communication, we're storing all of what happens in the process. In a certain format for everybody to be able to see, right? So if you want to be able to trust the system, then you can do so by just analyzing, hey, okay, so what evidence was used? Here's the evidence. Okay, how was the consensus made among the clusters or among the agents? Well, here you have it, and so on, right? So that's how it works. And like we have a massive amount of data that we actually have to store, and we were looking for a great solution. And since we're building on Sui, and you guys just popped up like in the nick of time, it was like perfect timing. So we decided just to go all in on Walrus, and that's where we're at right now.
That is fascinating. I think it's a great overview for anyone who's listening here. Can I hold on to for just one additional question here? Like, do you foresee any risks if some of these things are not being done on chain? What are the pros and cons as you think about weighing the options?
Yeah, so I think the transparency for this particular use case is the most important, right? And we can be fully transparent, but there might be situations where there has to be kind of like a transaction between maybe the truth swarm and an external party, where some information has to be retrieved, and this person or this entity or this group of people have to remain anonymous. And that's where we're going to see some difficulties, but we believe that the zero knowledge technology there will be the solution. So zero knowledge technology can act in a manner where we can verify a piece of data or a piece of information, even the identity of somebody, without having to reveal the entirety of that piece of information. So that is one of the things that we see on the long term, which is going to become an issue. And then additionally, a risk is where we become over reliant on a system which is fully and autonomously run, And, you know, like we built our system so that it can scale. Like you can spin up your agents and you can add them to a swarm, and there's literally no cap. You know, like as long as your agents can provision a certain type of information, then there will be an exchange of value. You can provide that information if your agents are called upon. So the problem with that is that, you know, like coming back to the LLM story, it's like, how can we absolutely make sure that everything is 100% correct? Well, we cannot. You know, like we are trying to make the scale so large and such a variety of databases and information that comes into the system that it's very hard to be wrong, because we're building this truth from and these agents to be objective. But in the end, my belief is we as humans, we will always remain the conductors of the orchestra, right? Like as soon as we start to completely step away 100% from these systems, they become black boxes. And then we're back at, you know, then we're back at like even a worse stage than we are right now, trusting the black box, but at least they're centralized and they're run by humans and there will be repercussions, you know? But if we completely abstract ourselves away from the equation, then that's potentially going to be dangerous, right? So that's also one of the reasons why we really believe in the distributed ownership of these massive agent systems, right? These swarms, because if there is a very distributed set of owners that are all have, you know, a certain stake and a certain say in the direction, we see it more as like a business. You know, you have an autonomous team of workers that can perform things for you from a business perspective, and all you have to do is say, okay, you know, this period we're going to focus on this. Hey, we're going to sign up a new company that is like requesting our service, and it's going to pay the swarm for, you know, verifying information and so on. So yeah, I think like staying in the loop as humans to a certain degree is super crucial. And for that, we also have to develop the right tools, management tools that make the information understandable for us. Because it's, you know, like I said earlier in the conversation, it's going to be so vast, you know, vast amounts of data, vast amounts of conversation history between agents. And, you know, like who knows, maybe agents in the future, they're not even going to use natural language to communicate with each other. We've seen these videos online where they're, you know, reverting back to weird invented languages, or they're even starting to communicate by inaudible frequencies, you know, like who knows.
You know,
Yeah.
we've been seeing like people communicate with agents, or at least with GPT, with XML, because it's more structured than it has more structure than our languages, and it's easier to digest. And I also read a few weeks ago this interesting note from a founder that created this app where you would submit music notes, and the app would basically interpret the music, or at least provide some music files. And people were starting to submit music notes created by AI. So like AI started creating its own like music system, because people are asking the GPT like, okay, what music system, what notes could I submit, or what type of music could I submit? And then AI, or OpenAI, came up with their own type of music letters, or language, and started submitting it to the app. So the founders started thinking, okay, like now the AI, or the agent, is telling us what features to implement, because users are actually requesting it, and they even came up with their new type of language that the app wasn't originally intended to understand. So I think we're going to see more and more of this, but at the same time, the data that we use to train these models is going to come mostly in English, at least LLMs, right? So we need to understand how we could find better vectorization for numbers, and what's more efficient for the actual agents.
Yeah, and I think you've opened like a Pandora's box could be open right here, right now. But from what I'm hearing from you guys is we're almost headed into the start of accountable AI era, or more like a constitutional AI agents are being developed, where accountability essentially means verifiable provenance plus some sort of shared memory. And this all being done because of the exponential growth of how agents are evolving based on natural language processing. And Yannick brought up, like, but who knows, this language might not be the same in the near future. Is that a fair assessment that we are heading into some sort of an accountable AI setup?
Yeah, I think we are, because it's a very simple. It's the math to get to that conclusion is very simple. The logic, not the math. But it's like, okay, we as a society, we're always optimizing for the whole. We have a new technology that can not, I don't like the word automate, because automate means like we replace somebody, right? Okay, I'm going to automate your job away. It's going to be automated now. That's definitely going to happen. But I think like optimization is a much better word. And what needs optimization? Well, financial institutions are still running on some like super ancient COBOL like language. Public infrastructure in the most of the West is pretty shitty. And like there's so many things that really are in need of this technology, but at the same time, those are critical infrastructures that also need the safety and the security, right? Like no financial institution is going to replace their bankers with AI agents if they cannot be 100% sure that they are going to be able to trust these things, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think this would be an interesting area, and that's why you need decentralized technology, right? Like Sui and Walrus, and showcasing the entire accountability aspect, what these agents are doing, which is just not simply a black box. But moving on to what Mike has been building on with their Nexus testnet, right? You guys recently announced the Nexus testnet. What should people know about the Talus stack that you're building and Walrus?
Yeah, of course. So I think might be useful to explain 1 second what Nexus is and how it actually adds value, so we could have a bit more context. So Nexus is a decentralized agentic automation protocol purpose-built to support verifiable agent execution, permissionless tool hosting, tools like Walrus or any Web2 API or even Web3 smart contracts, we call them on-chain tools, and even monetization. In our view, it lays the groundwork for this efficient, decentralized digital economy that we've been talking about by turning all the logic into autonomous value generating actions. And what we did with the test, we basically launched the version of the framework, which we've been improving throughout time. Now you're able to basically deploy tools, orchestrate different agents, and they all run on Sui. And yeah, we plan, or at least within the next couple of weeks, we plan on building consumer applications on top of our framework, that consumer AI applications on top of our framework that enable people to interact with agents, launch their agents, and monetize them. And we've even come up with this new interesting concept called agent versus agent gaming, where you'll be able to have agents battle against one another, and these agents will be part of certain competitions that will resolve into into specific outcomes, and it brings a business model to these agents from day one. And I also think one of the biggest problems is a lot of people launch these agents and it's very hard to monetize them. They don't have a built-in business model. So we're changing that with our consumer applications. And that way we could build a bunch of tools. We could have a broader ecosystem of workflows, a broader ecosystem of developers that want to launch agents, whether it's for gaming, for DeFi, for consumer services, and so forth. And we're really excited. So if you have any questions or want to learn more about the framework, we have a full-on doc site that you could read. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them after the AMA.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'd love to understand a bit more, shifting gears towards some of the business models as you think about, right? We both are leveraging Walrus, you both are building on Sui. So as some of the folks also look in the audience looking to leverage AI agents and so forth, to think about AI business model in Web3 and how do you monetize this data layer and the data that's been accumulated across the stack. What advice do you have for the builders? But before we even get to that, what is the business model that you guys leveraging right now?
Yeah. So
Yannick, and then Mike,
yeah.
please. Thanks.
All right. So I have a nice phrase which I like to repeat all the time, which is like, we are in the business of building businesses. We are not interested in building, the next wave of X grifter swarms or agents or what have you. What we want to achieve and what we're slowly achieving is for our users to have the capability to use just plain natural language to build larger systems, for example, clusters up to 100 agents, and like I said, swarms, which are comprised of multiple clusters, just using natural language, and then immediately being able to service endpoints that are real businesses. So we wanted to really showcase this capability and the power of our stack by just like building out this first application, and we're going to build out some more swarms that are powering different apps. So we're working on a DeFi solution. We're working on some prediction and market solutions. But yeah, so we really have this notion of like, these systems are going to be the most profitable for our community and for our users if they can like become the middleware between already existing businesses and the critical infrastructure, which is like the large language models and what have you behind that, right? Like these agents in clusters and in swarms, they are really there to really at a high velocity um, take information, arbitrary data, bring it on chain, propagate it, model it in a format where it becomes real value and valuable, it becomes a valuable asset for whatever endpoints you are servicing, and to actually get paid from that, right? So the application there is really broad and really wide. You can think about anything, and probably there would be, some kind of like a logical solution in terms of a swarm or an agent cluster to alleviate some of the pain points in any specific industry. Be it the traditional financial industry, be it education, be it, like for example, like what we are focused on as the foundation, the verification of arbitrary data and bringing it in the chain in a verified manner, and trying to get closer to a ground truth through these systems. You can dream far and wide, and you'll be able to come up with something that can become really valuable in our society, in this world, and service real businesses. Hence, we are in the business of creating businesses. And how do we get paid and how do our users get paid is simply by focusing on the quality of the work that's being done, right? We don't need more mass in this world. We don't need more AI generated videos for social media. We have enough of that shit, right? We need real utility. We need real change. We need real work to be done that is going to push the boundaries of what we think is possible today.
I love that framing. Mike, what's the business model angle that you guys are pursuing, and anything else you'd want to add on as well?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. To clarify how like Talos creates value, we've been coming up with basically three different business models. The first is thinking about agents as services. So developers can compose Talos tools into agents that offer services to other applications. You can think about that as like software as a service, but in terms of agents. Then we have the second, which is market for agents, which is platforms are able to serve marketplaces where users discover, compete with, and even monetize agents. And this opens up another business opportunity for agents where you could get more demand for people to use these agents, and these agents could charge. And then the third one is market for tools, which is developers are able to publish different tools and monetize the tools that these agents use within their workflow. So you as a developer could come and build a tool and get paid for it, while hundreds or thousands of agents use it, and even swarms like swarms. So I think, and I want to resonate to something that Yannick said that was really interesting, which is we're in the business of creating businesses for any agent to be a business, for any developer to be able to monetize. his IP or his tech or his ideas. I think that's one of the most interesting value props of the digital economy is that you'll be able to provide all these tooling and within a compostable infrastructure enable these business models that will bring value, and you as a single developer could hopefully build a unicorn without having to explore that much, as long as you bring value to your agents and activity. And then ultimately how the framework works is, yeah, you have to execute transactions. These transactions get routed through Sui, and then some components of you get like you're able to pay for like coordination or prioritization of the workflows, and then the framework charges for that essentially.
I love what you said there. It's like probably there's gonna be some unicorns that are just like either like two man or one man shows, you know. That's really a vision and that's really a dream that I can abide by and that I support.
This has been a fabulous conversation, not just around AI and AI agents, but more so deeply in terms of how you guys are thinking about building this new world that we are all moving towards, and at the same time leveraging decentralized distributed technology and protocols like Sui and Walrus. But we're almost at the top of the hour, and I hate this time of the hour, but as any good thing, uh, things come to an end. But before we do that, I would like to use some time and give you guys some time to share some alpha with the community, the folks that are listening to this. It could be airdrops, it could be the partnerships that you might want to share, any GitHub repos, devnets, competitions, funding. Now is the time. Mike?
Yeah, of course. So I would definitely check us out our docs, which will onboard you to the testnet, docs.talos.network. We have a lot of interesting partnerships coming up, a lot of interesting initiatives, and we've been somewhat quiet, but I've been posting a lot of weekly updates for people to keep up with everything that's been happening behind the scenes at Talos. And we're just looking forward to release all these consumer applications and make sure that we make it big in terms of AI agents and make the digital economy more open and efficient.
Yannick?
Yeah, I have a lot of alpha. I have Sui Alpha.
Let's go.
So we were really lucky because we got selected out of, I believe, 600 different projects that applied for the Sui Hub Accelerator, the MENA version, a few months ago. And we got in, and through that we received a investment. And we just finished the program, and the program was really great. Thanks to guys like Rohan, thanks to guys like actually the entire Miston Labs team and Sui Foundation. We've had the chance to interact with fabulous people, really smart people. I personally have learned a lot from all of the interactions, and I want to give a big shout out to Miston Labs. I've had so many conversations with team members from Miston Labs that were just, like really refreshing because it's not every day that you can have, top tier conversations about real business, about, really building stuff in the Web3 space because there's so much, bullshit going on as well. So I want to give a big up to you guys. And then additionally, we just launched our agent license leaseback program. So all our users that have bought an agent license are capable to lease the licenses back to us. And we're actually giving nice rewards for those who do lease. And what we're going to do with all of the leased licenses is we're going to increase the size of the truth swarm. The truth swarm is starting to become profitable, and we actually became the very, very first AI-powered fact-checking provider of Google, which is a nice step in the future direction. We've also received a sizable grant from Google. I know it's kind of like a funny thing to say, but yeah, we're trying to, like bring some transparency to that side of the equation. And we're really proud to be an official fact check provider because if you look for fact check information using their fact check tools, you will see roll up content. And that content is entirely powered by our users that are performing like roll ups on X. So I'm also very thankful for everybody that tuned in. And then, of course, with the market conditions, we're gearing up for a TGE. The date is not public yet, but it will be soon enough. So yeah, I'm super happy to be here in this moment. You know, like it's all perfect timing. We're blessed with the collaboration between Walrus and Sui, and yeah, just gonna keep building diligently from here on out.
This is a volnado and a tsunami of alpha here, Yannick. Thank you. I'm pretty sure the community would love this. This has been an amazing session. Thank you both for joining. Mike Hanano from Talus Labs, Yannick from Swarm Networks. Excited for both of you building within our ecosystem and can't wait to see what all you guys achieve. And again, my co-hosts and amazing teammates, Amir and Rebecca, joining the spaces today. We'll come back with another amazing spaces with our partners. But until then, have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate
Have
it.
a good weekend.
And Rohan, by the way, thank you for making the grant from Walrus possible. It helps out a lot. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.